Hey guys, Thomp here. I am coming to you today with the first in a new video series that I will be calling the D2 Test Bench. Each week I'm going to be asking the community to come up with a build to challenge me to build a character, and in order to flush out as many ideas as possible for each build, I will be using Hero Editor. Now, I am sticking to 4 solid rules here. The first one is that each character is only going to be leveled to level 85, so it's accessible to players who might want to build it in Battle.net, and it will have the appropriate stat and skill points. Number 2, all gear cannot be tampered with in any way, meaning anything that I use exists in retail. For example, craft rings and amulets. You'll see in the build today that I had to make a dual leech ring, and I actually pulled up a prior trade from JSP and pulled stats directly off of a crafted ring that actually exists in the game. So while it may be an idealistic version of an item, it is a real item that does exist somewhere. Rule number 3, characters must stay true to the build, as close as humanly possible. And number 4, everything must be able to be obtained on Battle.net. So make sure you like, subscribe, and comment below with what you want me to build for next week. I'll be sharing a save file for this character in the description with you, for you guys to tinker around and play with, and maybe come up with some better ideas than I did. So let's jump right into it. Alright guys, so this week's challenge was to build a bow assassin, and it actually proved to be rather difficult. As far as the theory crafting and kind of the theme of the build goes, my initial thought was, since we're going to be using a bow, I'm going to want to be utilizing the skill Venom. And I thought the best way to do that would be to get as much poison damage as humanly possible throughout my character, to apply as much poison as I possibly could. And it turns out that's actually incorrect. What Venom does is it caps the amount of time that you can deal poison damage after striking to 0.4 seconds. Meaning that if you had a bunch of 451 poison small charms, that damage is normally dealt over a span of 10 seconds. With Venom applied, it actually cuts that window down to 0.4. So you'll still deal that same amount of damage that you would over 0.4 seconds. So it doesn't apply all the damage at once, it actually cuts it short. So the equivalent is, you know, a 451 poison small charm really only nets you like something like 20 poison damage per strike, because of the way that window closes. So that didn't really quite work. The flip side of that is poison skill damage actually double applies. So poison skill damage will apply to the initial cast of Venom, and then it applies a second time as you're attacking with each strike. So if I am wearing, like in this case, I'll be wearing a bramble in my chest piece, gives me 50 poison skill damage. That 50 poison skill applies to the amount of poison that Venom applies to my attacks, and then that 50 poison skill damage is then applied to the attack itself. So it's really 100 poison skill damage. And without that mechanic, this build absolutely would not have worked in any way. So now that that's kind of the idea behind everything, let me go through the skills with you guys and show you how I have everything set up. So naturally, the first thing we're going to do is max out Venom. We have it at 35 right now. It's going to go to 36 with battle orders. That's pretty cool. It'll actually go to 38 with the Spirit on switch when we actually cast it. So we have Venom there. 1 point into Fade was actually enough to get us max resistances and health, so we left that as is. You have Burst of Speed here for whenever you can afford to drop your Fade for some more mobility. Some prerequisites. Now, Shadow Warrior versus Shadow Master. Shadow Warrior will actually use whatever skill is on your right click while it's active. So in this case, I wanted Shadow Warrior so that I could try to keep Psychic Hammer on my right click as much as possible, and allow the Shadow Warrior to cast that and help kind of create some crowd control passively. It's really the only reason it runs on this build, but you end up having enough skill points that you have extra to blow anyways, so there didn't really seem to be a better application than Shadow Warrior. Let's see here. Into martial arts, I have 1 point all the way down into Dragonflight. We're using Dragonflight to essentially teleport and reposition our Mercenary and our Shadow Warrior. 100% just the utility. 1 point is enough. We just need that teleport. Now, unfortunately, the only way this build can compete and actually kill monsters is if we use traps. I was really trying to avoid using traps at all for the sake of the theme of the build, but it didn't work. So I finally caved and used some traps. Our primary trap is going to be Death Sentry, and the reason we're using Death Sentry over Lightning Sentry is the corpse explosion damage. So what we are going to end up essentially creating is a snowball effect where once we get our first kill, the corpse explosion is going to go off, kill other guys faster, and then their corpses will explode and clear out the area. So we maxed out Death Sentry, we maxed out Lightning Sentry for the synergy, and then we put 18 hard points into Fire Blast as it would increase the number of times that Death Sentry would fire before breaking. It actually caps out at 18 hard points for that. And we had so many extra skill points to use that it just seemed like the best thing to do. These fights end up being more prolonged than a typical trap assassin fight would be. I didn't bother with Blade Shield. It doesn't add enough value to me. I would rather put those skill points other places. Now the fun part is the gear, and we're going to start right off with the Widowmaker Ward Bow. Now, I have a 40-15 in this Widowmaker Ward Bow because we're going to find out quickly that attack speed is a big problem for this build. Obviously, the assassin's not designed to use a bow and arrows, but if we try to squeeze as much IAS out of this character as possible, we have something that actually sort of works. The other beautiful thing about this bow is that it gives you 5 guided arrow. It also includes ignore target defense and deadly strike, but to be perfectly honest, the primary function here is guided arrow. What guided arrow does for us is it removes our need for dexterity outside of being able to wear the bow. Guided arrow never misses. It always strikes its target, so attack rating is no longer a problem for us, and it frees up an amulet slot and a ring slot if our plan was to use angelics, and it also frees up a bunch of stat points if our plan was to use more dexterity to get an attack rating that would allow us to hit consistently. So this is really the only bow I found that worked. I tried 6 40-15s in a Hydra bow. I tried 6 5/5 poison facets. I tried BOTD Faith, all different kinds of things. I even tried ice. I tried a demon machine because on some mechanics spread AoE when the exploding arrow goes off. It does not work for poison. So that is something that I tested, and I think this is the best all-around solution for this build specifically. Then in the helm slot, we have a G-face with a 40-15 in it. Fast hit, recovery, crushing blow, deadly strike. Extra strength in there, always a good thing. High Lords, extra skill for us for our Venom. 20 IAS, again, just trying to squeeze as much IAS as possible. Deadly Strike. Bramble in the chest piece. This is the only way to do this. The 50 poison skill damage is actually an effective 100% of poison skill damage. Just about everything else on this piece of gear is negligible, but it's very, very important for the overall damage of this build. Exact same thing with the triangle gloves. It's just here for that 25 poison skill damage. It ends up applying as 50% poison skill damage. So there really aren't any other choices for chest and gloves if you're going to go a bow route. Then for our boots, we went with Shadow Dancers. Again, 2 Shadow Disciplines. It's going to include increase our Venom. 30 faster run walk and hit recovery are always nice. 25 dex is a nice bonus as well. Again, it cut down on the amount of dex we had to spend to be able to wield our bow. And then our belt, we're using a Nosferatu coil. Again, IAS. IAS, IAS, IAS. We needed to hit that next breakpoint, and I'm just trying to jam as much in as I possibly can to make this thing work. 7 life leech isn't a bad deal either, and the 15 strength, again, allowed us to use our spirit with fewer points. Now, I did have to create 2 dual leech rings These are stats from a ring that I actually found on D2JSP that was for sale as of last night. So it's 39 attack rating, 5 mana leech, 7 life leech, 56 mana, 9% mana regen, and 11 all resistances. Now this is pretty much an idealistic ring for this build because as we're going to find out, mana is a huge problem for us. We have to kind of be sparing with how we use our mana because we're going to be running Guided Arrow and Death Sentry consistently. And while it might seem that 10% mana leech is a good amount, it really isn't a whole lot. And I didn't really want to waste any points into energy. So this build can function, but we do have to be careful about how fast we're using our mana. My switch, I have a CTA and a Spirit, pretty standard there. In our inventory, we have 3 12 faster hit recovery Shadow Discipline Grand Charms to hit the next breakpoint that we needed, and then the rest of them are all lifers. Torch, Annie, and the rest of these guys are 3 20/20. For our Mercenary, we have an Andes with a 40/15 in it, an ETH Fortitude, and an Infinity. Now, when it came time for the Mercenary, I tried a bunch of different things. I mentioned before, mana is a little bit of a problem for us. I did try using an Insight Merc, but the resistances are too high on the monsters. You really need to use the Infinity to get those resistances down, because our primary sources of damage are Poison and Lightning. We also have some passive fire damage coming off the Torch and some passive cold damage coming off of his defensive aura, because this is an Act 2 Nightmare defensive Frozen Aura Mercenary. So we want to be able to utilize all those forms of elemental damage, because the fact of the matter is our base physical damage is next to nothing. So that's a real integral part of this build specifically. As far as the stats, before I forget, it's really super simple. Just enough strength to wear your Monarch, enough dex to wield the bow, and the rest are going into vitality. I think that covers just about everything. So let's get into the run. So we're just going to go ahead and do our Battle Command, Battle Orders, Venom, Shadow Warrior, and Fade, and we are ready to go. Now, I did try playing with the idea of using pre-buff claws, and while they are very useful, they aren't very practical. So the duration on Venom and Battle Orders is kind of short. So I found myself having to continuously pre-buff, and it was slowing down everything, and I was having to take Grand Charms out of my inventory to make space for everything so that I could tele in and out, and I just said, you know what, to hell with it. We're going to do it this way instead. So we filled the inventory with charms and said forget the pre-buff. We're only missing out on a little bit of poison skill damage for our build. Let's just do it live. And as you can see, this does work, but it's very slow killing. Nope, we're going the wrong way. I do recommend taking some mana potions with you too, just in case, because you're going to get mana burned at some point, like probably here. And if that happens, you are you're in trouble. As you can see, I'm setting my traps, and then I'm diving in and switching over to hammer as quickly as possible. Then just kind of backing up and attacking and letting my guys do the work for me. See, any time that you have to use all 5 traps like that, it's not ideal. But it is working, so. And this time we have a nice little funnel effect going on, so I didn't have to reposition anybody. But like spots like this, we do have this problem a little bit. We're taking some good damage here. Let's focus here. Let's focus this fight. Alright, we're off and running. Let's just rebuff again because it's probably time for that. And we're back off. We're not breaking every immune, but we are doing enough damage to them outside of their immunities. I was having issues early on with my Mercenary dying, but we've kind of figured that out. I switched to the fort. The really tricky part of this run ends up being the Infector of Souls because so many guys spawn at once. You really just got to get that first kill and make sure you keep your ads alive. Otherwise, you're going to have a bad time. We got a healing potion there. Alright, let's preset our traps here for Grand Vizier. That could have been better. And it just got melted. So that is the benefit of this build. If you can anticipate what's happening, you can really melt things quickly. I'm sure this would translate well to, say, a Bale run. But I like doing Chaos, and it's a good test of overall strength, I think. Again, the mana regen on our rings is super, super clutch. Without that, we'd probably be in some trouble. And we do have to keep attacking so that we can keep stealing mana back. Otherwise, you run out super fast. Every once in a while, you get lucky like that, where you can pull things around corners where you have traps already set up, and that's just going to keep your mana up for you longer. But you really do have to kind of take it slow. I just now realized that our battle orders ran out. Okay, my game's bugging. Well, let me hit the seal. Come on now, any day. There we go. Hate when that happens. Stand back, fire away, and clean up the group. So the major issue with this build, I think, ends up being mobility. It's not really damage, because as you can see, we're clearing. It's not the most efficient, but it works. We're really relying on that snowball effect, and our Mercenary and the corpse explosions are really what's doing most of our damage for us. But as far as being an assassin that primarily uses a bow, we're certainly doing that. I know it doesn't seem like the best idea to be using Holy Freeze when you're relying on Corpse Explosion because you run the chance of the bodies breaking when they die, but you need that you really need that CC in order to get away from a group when you dive in, or else you just get melted. This character is not very tanky. I don't think anyone really designed, anyone ever really conceived of an assassin being played this way, and with and for good reason too. I'm gonna actually go ahead and pre-pop this seal, move our traps a little bit, just prepare for this fight, because this is the difficult one. keep our Merc alive. Alright. And we're at Diablo. Can we get there before he spawns? Keep the Merc alive. It's a race against the clock. Oh. I'd rather you shoot that at me. Come on. Our BO ran out. We got him. Got him. Alright guys, so that's going to do it for this week's video. Bow Assassin didn't quite work out the way we wanted it to, so make sure you like, subscribe, and comment down below on what I should build next week. Also, I stream all of my theory crafting on Twitch at twitch.tv/Thomp. And I wanted to give a big shout out to Durakan, who hung out with me and streamed pretty much all night the other night and helped me set this up. He taught me a lot about the assassin class that I didn't know and would have made this build significantly more worse than it was if not for him giving me some pointers and kind of pointing me in the right direction, but also kind of letting me figure it out myself. So I appreciate that, and I hope to see you guys on Twitch. Have a good night. Just a little post-video blooper reel for you guys. I was just watching the video and realized that I did that whole run with attack instead of guided arrow. So that probably helped us with our mana cost problem, but at the same time, could have been even better. So if you made it this far into the video, roast me in the comments for not using guided arrow the whole time after telling you how important it was in the gear setup, because we did just fine without it. Thanks for watching. More.